And we're live. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning into Brain Milk, the podcast with 2% fat. Top of the news is I think the biggest story from the weekend is kind of JD Vance keeps I guess leaking to the media that he did not really approve of this war and was not really supporting the war. What do you make of that? Do you think that's going to just keep happening?
Well, I mean, yeah, if the war does not go well, do people try to leak to make themselves look better, leak to make their bad people their political foes look bad, right? It's kind of a thing. Like when you're vice president, you're kind of chained to the president for good or for bad. So
Yeah.
there's no way to get around. It's like Kamala Harris. There's no way
Well,
she's going to.
and the president is kind of chained to the VP because he can't fire them. It's the only position he can't fire because they got elected, which is kind of funny. So it would be funny to think about Trump turning against JD Vance and then just kind of sidelining him for there's like 3 more years left of his presidency.
I
Long
think
time for JD Vance to kind of do nothing.
I don't think that's true. I think the president probably could fire the VP. Like if the president said, "I want you to quit," like is JD Vance going to stand in the
No,
corner, not be invited to anything, and be
maybe
like,
he got elected. He doesn't have to leave if he doesn't want to.
"Yeah, I guess that'd be a weird dynamic."
We might see it.
But then you wouldn't be included to anything. I guess you'd keep getting paid to do nothing. You wouldn't be able to.
There's a lot of perks to being VP, I think, especially
Yeah,
if you don't actually have any responsibility. He's
which is
already
already the
taking like all
case.
these vacations with his family.
Yeah, that's funny.
It is. Do you think Trump's going to get really pissed off though? I mean, like for instance, Trump did like a straw poll kind of, or just took like
Straw
a
poll.
no, in Mar-a-Lago, he was asking around, and people by a wide margin apparently think they like Marco Rubio more to be the next president or to get Trump's endorsement. Like, I think Trump's definitely going to try to endorse somebody and try to be kingmaker, right?
Well, the perks of Marco Rubio is much more popular among other senators. Like, I don't think a lot of senators like JD Vance. Everybody knows he's like a shameless hypocrite. Marco Rubio actually cares about stuff, right? He had a pretty important portfolio as a member of Congress. He actually cared about how we interacted with Russia and stuff. And JD Vance just says whatever it takes to get through the next sentence at any given time.
Yeah, he's kind of too online.
That's my assessment. Yeah, and he talks about stuff like I'm pretty informed and online, and I don't know what the hell he's talking about half the time. So I mean, I don't think that's good. Plus,
Yeah, right.
he's not very likable. Like Marco Rubio is not unlikable. JD Vance is uniquely unlikable. Almost everyone hates him. It's like the Al Franken joke. Like I like JD Vance more than any other American, and I hate JD Vance.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What you said about Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to think. I guess everything goes down to how bad this war goes and how just unpopular Trump gets in general. But I wonder if a lot of Republicans would just stop caring about Trump's endorsement. Like if he's trying to avoid some kind of primary and just pick somebody to get his kind of endorsement. Or do you think he might just never endorse anybody because then if he dies of old age or something pretty soon, right? He's pretty old, but then he's like kind of staking part of his legacy to whoever he wants to kind of tell Republicans who they should vote for next.
I think he'd have to endorse someone because at some point, if we just follow the Constitution and he is ineligible for office starting January 1st, 2029 or whatever. So at some point, the train is moving and you either say, I allow this train to keep moving, or you just don't do anything and the train moves on its own gravity anyway. So, there will be a 2028 primary with other Republicans running, and then they're going to be seeking his endorsement. So, he can't what is he going to go into the general election having never, endorsed any candidate for the Republican nominee? I think
I can see that. I could see him just trying to curry favor and get complimented and have all of them basically hang on the edge of their seat trying to get that endorsement and bribing him and having all their campaign members do every meeting at Trump property. Right? I could totally see him milking this and then just screw them all over and not really endorse somebody.
But think about how the primary system works. So they'll have a couple states, couple primaries. Eventually, you'll have 2 or 3 people pulling ahead. One person may already be getting a sizable plurality. So you think Trump would not endorse the obvious winner if he had already stood out and stood away from it for at least that long?
what if the person who's winning the primary is a person that says Trump betrayed us, he betrayed the MAGA movement, and I'm the real MAGA person? Or you get somebody saying we need to go back to like the old style Republican politics and old conservatism, and Trump's not a conservative. And, like 3 years from now, the entire Middle East has been bombed. All of our allies hate each other and open trade deals with China, right?
I have a
Like
question
I could
for you
see
though.
that as a possibility. Yeah.
Which early Republican primary state do you think is going to have a plurality of voters vote for that person?
I don't know. I mean, that is like way too far away to predict. Obviously, I mean, we don't even know the like Democrats maybe like switching up the caucus and primary kind of schedule. So will it be Iowa and New Hampshire first or South Carolina, or will a bunch of states want to like jump in line? I think Democrats are already thinking about changing their schedule to make it a more like have states that actually reflect the the American population a little bit more than New Hampshire and Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, to Iowa and New Hampshire is like, I don't know, favor that they are Americans. So like, yeah, I mean, they're pretty white
Yeah, but
states.
they're
Is
like,
that,
Iowa's probably like 91% white people or something,
do you think that's as
predominantly.
important in 2028 as it was in 2020?
What, them changing the schedule
Well, I mean,
and the
part of
dates
that
of the
too was
primaries and
kind of like
caucuses?
the aftermath of like the Floyd riots and stuff. You had like the Me Too, you had like the woke movement really taking steam. So do you think in 2028 that kind of thinking for the primary will be as important to the Democratic Party as it was 4 years ago? Just a
Probably
question.
when it starts getting serious about things like this. I mean, there's a lot of constituencies that aren't just white farmers in Iowa and then kind of rural white people in New Hampshire, right? Like South Carolina is the first one that really has kind of a sizable minority population. But people have been saying, I think it's been a while since I've seen anybody write about this, but a few months ago I heard talk that maybe like Colorado or Ohio would be a good one with like a big population, a little more diversity that kind of matches the American demographics a little bit more.
Yeah, maybe, but I mean, with a contested primary season and map, obviously it's going to be a marathon, not a sprint. So Iowa and New Hampshire, whoever wins those, may be interesting, but not necessarily compelling politicians or candidates to win it all. Right? I
Yeah,
mean, it is like a
it
first
would be
kind
good
of
for
push. Or
Americans elections though, because like how a lot of our policies on like what is it, ethanol and all the corn products that are just in Iowa, where like everybody running for president has to agree to those mandates where a certain amount of corn has to be grown to make oil, right, to make gasoline, right, like the ethanol and the gasoline. That's kind of a weird thing to always be forced to do and promise and promote when you're in office, just because you had to spend a year in Iowa leading up to the Iowa
yeah.
caucus.
Well, and the other thing too is it's like if you win
Mhm.
Iowa and New Hampshire, it's a pretty big tailwind going into the first couple big states. And like obviously, political scientists have pointed out that people like to vote for winners. Like there's a number of people
Yeah,
who
right.
lie about who they vote for. Like more people say they're
Oh,
voting
yeah.
for the presidential winner than than can possibly
And
be
their
true.
votes.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Right. But it'll be interesting to watch. Like Rand Paul, probably going to run, and he's like hardcore against Trump right now. He's definitely kind of a return to old school conservatism and obviously the libertarian element. Ted Cruz, probably a perennial presidential candidate, especially if it's really between Trump endorsing Marco Rubio or JD Vance. I think there's a lot of Republicans who did not run, and certainly not in 2024, but also 2020. And
yeah,
that you want to be president. So it'll be interesting to see how they navigate that.
yeah.
Let's talk about Iran real quick. I just wanted to point out it's Trump disrupting 20% of the world oil supply in the Red Sea is kind of bad timing. There's been a lot of things that, like he decommissioned those mine sweeping vessels. We had like four of them, and they were now
Well, I'll
being
stop
like
you there. Trump,
sent over
dude,
and
yeah.
scrapped.
I'm so tired of like, Trump saying like, I rebuilt the military. And it's like, yeah, all these 15-year shipbuilding plans were somehow radically changed. Trump,
No, but Pete Hegseth and Trump decommissioned these minesweeping ships, right? I
they
mean,
were
maybe that's
planned
a
to be,
plan that was.
they were planned to be decommed for years. Like everyone knew it was happening. Ships, aircraft, tanks, even like they have an expected
Well, what's
time
the
to be
argument
in
for it now
service.
that Iran is adding a bunch of mines to the Persian Gulf, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
What's the argument?
complicated, right? Like the U.S. military can't do everything. You can't plan for everything. You can't have, I mean, I've heard about this, like with the the amount of like amphibious ready group ships, so ARG ships, how many amphibious warships we have that can transport Marines, and you think about like what's our adversary in the Pacific, and it's like, okay, it's China, and it's like, okay, a amphibious ready group, which is like the amphibious version of a carrier strike group, has like 3 ships. Okay, how many Marines? 2,200. It's like you're going to go invade mainland China with 2,200 Marines and like a couple tanks. Like that's probably not going to happen. So, but then it's like, what do we do? What happens when Congress mandates that we have 30 amphibious ships in the active duty commission service roles at all times, and it's like the Navy's hamstrung by that, and then it's like cost overruns on, new bombers for the Air Force, new submarines for the Navy, and everything. It's just like it's a very complicated multivariate calculus, I guess you could say. And so, like the idea that Trump like did this or that, I mean, this is kind of like a risky thing that I think the military didn't necessarily think we would need a bunch of minesweepers. It's an important warfare area. It is an important mission area, and the Navy can't do everything. So I think they probably took a little more risk on that than, obviously when they made those decisions, they didn't think we'd be doing like a war of choice in Iran, right? So
Well, what do you think, like, kind of about the whole thing about Trump just being woefully unprepared, right? Like, Kash Patel just fired a bunch of those FBI agents that were like experts in Iranian counterterrorism, right? Um, there's probably a giant list of things that they just did not act as, like, the administration was not coordinated and did not prepare themselves, right? Like the military didn't protect those bases that got bombed and all those soldiers died, right? Couldn't that have been protected, or those people moved away from what is essentially like a trailer?
well, I
Even
mean, it's
now
complicated.
there's
It's
video
compli-
of like drones going around, like just kind of buzzing our bases and like apparently not being detected and or not being stopped.
I mean, it's complicated, right? Because like you have to prioritize saying, and like, should we reinforce like every base any American service member is in? Like, yeah, that'd be great, but like, there's a finite amount of money, and then you make choices, right? Like, there's like a thing where like the average age of like a lot of military buildings is actually pretty old, and that's because they prioritize like operational spending, like having money go to operations and having like the military do the mission it needs to do, and so they scrimp on some buildings. So each branch is different too, but like. I mean, the fact of the matter is like, okay, like if you have a finite amount of, let's say you have X, like I'm going to make up a number, 700 aircraft scattered across the Middle East or whatever, right? So like, should you adequately protect every single one? Yes. Can you? Like, how many hangars do you need? Okay, how many reinforced fortified hangars do you need? What about when they're transiting? What about when you're doing maintenance? What if like you're having maintenance on a hangar, so now you have more aircraft and too few and so like, okay, there's
No, I
always
get
going to
that, but it's more
yeah.
about Trump starting a war and then appearing flat-footed on a lot of different metrics across a lot of different departments and agencies, and the military. I guess. I
I mean,
guess
that's
there's operational things where they
yeah.
can't give away what they're doing, so they can't be too obvious about suddenly changing everything that's clearly, obviously directed at a potential war with Iran, right?
Yeah, I mean that stuff's talked about every single day on CNN. The fact that like all these reporters are talking to the people around Trump, and the people around Trump are leaking, and members of the military are leaking all this information. We weren't prepared for X, Y, or Z. We thought this was a bad idea. Trump, everyone's saying Trump literally thought this would be Venezuela. We would just drop some bombs, and the Ayatollah and all the people who survived would be like, "Oh, please, sir," as Trump always says, "Sir, please let us
Yeah.
surrender to you unconditionally." And it's like. The funny thing too is like this is such like a political quagmire, because like I just love the fact that Trump and like Hegseth were like basically saying we want World War II style unconditional surrender, and it's like, so you want a negotiation, but you also want unconditional surrender, which is
Yeah.
definitely not explicitly not a negotiation of any kind. And then it's like, well, how are you going to make them unconditionally surrender? And it's like, we did that in Germany and Japan because we like, I mean, Japan's an example where we kind of bombed them and blockaded them. But like in Germany, we took all that land from them, and we put all the German people in cities and said, okay, like no soldiers here. And there's like literally no one to fight anymore. So that's not going to be the case in Iran.
Yeah, although Trump is apparently sending up to like 5,000 troops now. I guess the theory is they're going to invade that island and then use
Targ
that as
Island, yeah.
yeah, to basically take control of the oil situation in Iran, where 90% of the oil gets exported through, and then I guess use that as a staging ground for maybe further bombings, or I guess maybe future deployments of troops.
It doesn't make any sense, because if you think about like look at the drone attacks and ballistic missiles that have gotten through like the Emirates and Saudi Arabia, and you see these giant fireballs of like oil, plumes from smoke basically from catching fire, and it's like, okay, so if you're going to say all like so much of like the oil that comes out of Iran comes out of Karg Island, and it's just a couple miles off the coastline of Iran. And like we don't have a political settlement right now. So like, okay, if we take it, anyone standing on that island could be drone striked from Iran, right? They could have ballistic missiles just rain down on it. They could destroy it themselves. So like, I don't know. It's a lot of like wishful thinking, and there's not a lot of strategy going on right now. It's also like not helpful that Trump and Hegseth keep saying this war is basically over. We've won
Yeah,
100%, but it's just going to keep
right.
going on for a little
I
bit.
think
And
we've
it's like,
actually won the Iran war like 8 times by Trump's count by now.
yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's like, it's funny. Like you're at work and you see production reports and you're like, we're 99.999% done. You're like, that's a really high percent. That's pretty close to
Yeah.
1.00. It's like,
Yeah.
how, like, what is going on? Did someone not just send a file? Like, what's that
Yeah.
0.001%? You're like, huh, that's weird. But
Plus, I like too how Trump just waffles on everything. He says there's not going to be boots on the ground. Well, maybe a expeditionary force of 2,500 to 5,000 Marines. Which and he said something to the effect of, "I don't consider that boots on the ground." It's like, well, are there boots connected, like being worn by soldiers? Are they on the ground of a foreign territory? It's just always so stupid.
yeah, they didn't try that in Viet. We don't consider these 500,000 soldiers in South
Yeah,
Vietnam as boots on the ground.
yeah,
I mean, they kind of did that anyway with the advisors, right? We have a bunch of advisors wearing U.S. Army uniforms
yeah,
that came from
right.
U.S. Army bases in the United States.
Yeah. Do you think it's sad that Trump killed so many power projects for solar and wind power now that the price of oil is skyrocketing, and or a lot of areas of the world might not have access to oil if this war keeps being like shit hitting the fan?
I mean, this is one of those things that there's no logic sense to it, right? Like the sun puts out more power a minute than the earth needs in a year. And like most of that sunlight doesn't, that's the sunlight hitting the earth, not even all the other sunlight. And it's just like all the free power we could ever want. And said, we'd rather burn gasoline. Thank you.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like obviously the energy of the past and like, people, it was all in the 2024 election, like, oh, he's for the economy of the past, I'm for the economy of the future. But like, that's actually kind of true. Like, why, like, who cares about oil, right? Like, it'll be, and it's not even helping because gas prices are going up. They're going to like 369, right? It's 69 cents more per gallon than it was like 3 weeks ago. People are speculating. I find it funny because I've been watching like the oil futures and stuff. And it's a good idea of like what actual people trading these securities, investments, and commodities think is going to happen. And it's like, it's amazing to me that like Trump says, oh, the war's almost over. And then like the futures go way down. It's like, who's believing Trump? Like, I don't get, like,
yeah,
you guys are
just
supposed to be so
morons.
smart. Like, oh,
Right.
there's these hyper like rational rich people who make all the money and deserve it because they're so smart. And they're like, yeah, I believe Trump. It'll be over in a minute.
Yeah, he said it's 100% over twice in the last 2 days, but um, yeah, like I
Or
don't
I will
know.
say it's funny because so much stuff happens like after Friday night at 4 p.m. or for afternoon when the markets close and then we bomb another
Right.
country. Then bad news comes out. Yeah.
There's some fun rumors this weekend. Netanyahu was trending all weekend because there were rumors that he died, and then they put out some videos that appeared to be AI. Any thoughts on that? Would that be good or bad for America and or Trump if Netanyahu was dead or something?
I don't know. That's a pretty big speculation. I'll just say it like this
Because
shows
Israel still has
exactly.
the blackmail, right? Like it won't die with Netanyahu. Netanyahu didn't, like watch the tapes and
Yeah.
like have him on his person, right? I imagine the Israeli government will still be able to control everything Trump does, right?
Well, it shows once again like the complete like irrationality of the business model of like OpenAI and the Sora like capabilities that you can do. Like if you pay and you can just make endless amounts of video content without asking like to what end and why am I doing this and what consequences. And it's just like okay,
Yeah,
so like you can make convincing video that like a world leader died or was murdered, and then the funny thing is like six fingers on a hand on Netanyahu in that video because I think I saw a screenshot of that picture too, and it's like so then you're like actually trying to make a video of probably Netanyahu saying something he didn't say, but then because it is six fingers because AI is so fucking dumb, you make people think he's dead, and then it like the stupid video of who knows whatever they were gonna do, and then it snowballs into oh my god Netanyahu's dead, and it's
yeah,
I
right.
don't know like imagine if something like that happened and people were convinced that like Trump died, like wouldn't the markets crater? How many like hundreds of billions of dollars would evaporate in moments? Like it wouldn't matter if it like came back a couple minutes later or whatever, but it's like still a shocking. And then that's like, what's the business model? Our business model is allowing that to happen somehow, and we make profit, I guess, from that. It's so stupid.
Well, the worst part is those like Kalshi betting apps or the prediction markets, where
Yeah.
obviously the insider trading of like people making giant bets right before Trump announces something. But that's kind of weird too, because I have to imagine there has to be some kind of like evening out on that, right? Like it's not in Kalshi's interest to have just every bet be, just completely insider traded based off of governments, right? Like the whole bombing of Iran, like, will it happen today? Like, is that like it's not in all these prediction markets' interest to allow people to do all these bets and then let one person just make $600 million and steal all their money because he got the insider trading kind of
What does
knowledge to
Kalshi
be.
care? They probably make like a small percentage of every trade, right?
No,
And the
but I mean,
spread.
it's because for the long term success of it, who's going to use one of these prediction markets if they're just constantly being gamed and your bet is not really a fair bet, right? Because someone will just make a prediction with a like 30 minutes head notice, make all the money, and now everybody else loses. That's not good for the customer. So,
Well,
like
they would
these
make
prediction
money.
markets.
They would make money on net trade. Other people are still trading stupid shit,
Yeah,
like
but
whether
then everybody would stop using it, boycott it, not continue to use. Like, that's why gambling companies, it's in their interest to not rig everything, right? Because they want more people betting on fair fights or fair games or whatever. It's not really in the betting app's interest to have all of its consumers know that it's being rigged and they're not doing anything about it, right?
I'm not 100% sure I understand the logic of that. I don't think Kalshi gives a shit what people vote on or bet on because they make money on every trade anyway. You could bet
I'm
on whether the sun will come up, and Kalshi probably gets some small percent if like someone bet like yes if against you. And when like if you're betting that the sun won't come up and someone else bets that it will, they make money. But Kalshi has to
Yeah,
make
but don't you
some
think
money
that
on
that's
that.
don't can't you see how it's bad business for a prediction market when all of their bets on these things on politics are just being utterly gamed by people? Like that's not good business. That if you were
I would
running
say it's
that,
illegal because
and
it's
then you
insider
probably get
trading.
sued,
I don't think
right?
it is. Yeah, I mean, I think the federal government should get involved with the FTC and the SEC. I don't know why they allow people to do it. It's like fully legalized, unregulated, unsupervised insider trading. Of course, like I think it should be bad. But I don't think it's bad for the profit margin of Kalshi. I don't think they give a fuck, right? The more people betting and even taking stupid
Yeah,
bets,
but
they
they
make
only
more
make
money.
money with a lot of people making bets, right? Because they're taking portions of that. So if all of a sudden, if everyone's like Kalshi's rigged, don't use it, and now they have five people betting, and one of them's rigging every single thing on it, that's not good for business, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I mean, it's like if you have multiple people betting, I think we're going to go to war with Iran on March 2nd, and other people are like, I bet March 4th, I bet April 5th, I bet like June, I bet never, right? And then someone comes in and says, I bet March 28th. Like, that's a bet, and then it's got odds to it. So, like, I don't think Kalshi cares necessarily. People are like, that's not ruining the market for everybody else. They just knew what was actually going to happen. They knew what horse was going to win. That doesn't stop other people from taking a guess or picking the name out of a hat and just putting money on that horse. It doesn't change the fact that the race like gets run. And that would be an example of actual cheating, I guess, and rigging the yeah, I don't know. I just don't think Kalshi like has anything to lose or loses anything financially from insider trading. I don't
Well,
maybe
we can agree to disagree on
yeah.
that. um, there was an interesting moment where Hegseth told CNN when CNN asked a question that he said the sooner David Ellison takes over that network, meaning CNN, the better, because there was a negative question about the Iran war. I found that kind of interesting because it's kind of like Pete Hegseth giving away the game, and that like conservatives are just buying all the media properties to destroy them and make them kind of like state news and propaganda, kind of like Orban and
They're just going to
Hungary's
ruin them.
style.
Let all
Yeah.
the popular people on CNN go start their own Substack and personal, like private, uh, you know, new media platform that they so choose. Like, didn't Anderson Cooper already leave? Like, I imagine like a lot of those
No, I don't
people.
think he left CNN. I think he left 60 Minutes or something on
Oh yeah,
CBS.
like who cares? Like at some point, like there's so much media out there, and this is not a hill I'm going to die on, but like the fact that like the federal what is it the communications agency like they regulate like
The
broadcast.
FTC,
Yeah, that's a Federal Trade
Federal Trade
Commission.
Commission, right?
Mm, whatever it is.
FCC.
FCC, that's it. Yeah. So the FCC regulates broadcast like television and it's like and radio. Who cares, right? Sirius isn't counted in that. They're not regulated by that. If you go on the internet, that's not counted. That's not regulated by the FCC. Like So the fact that like I don't know, I'm not gonna like get all up in arms about this. Like while it's stupid, I think if they purposely go in and try to put a Republican or conservative bent on the media, people will just leave. Liberals will stop watching it. The stocks of all these companies will crater, or the divisions, and it'll just sink, and they'll have lost shit tons of money by ruining the organizations that they took over and bought. And I think that it's probably not going to necessarily affect people. Like even like Fox News, only like 2 million people watch it or whatever a day, like during the prime time or whatever. But like there's like tons of. I was just listening to Scott Galloway and Kara Swisher's podcast, and they have like they themselves have more people who listen to their podcast a day or whatever whenever it comes out than CNN does. So it's like, no love lost. And all these people, another thing is like most acquisitions kind of fail anyway. So I find it funny. Like all these companies are trying to like compete with YouTube and streaming and Netflix. So they're buying up everything. And like synergies, at least in the business world, don't really take place. People overpay for stuff. Then you have all these different teams come, you fire a bunch of people are looking for other jobs. And basically like whatever synergies you get don't actually materialize and take place. And I wouldn't be surprised if the people who are backrolling or funding these giant acquisitions of multiple companies with all the broadcasting, they're going to be like, off, like just taking massive losses on their books in like a year or two or three or
Well,
four.
they all have massive debts, and the Ellisons are gonna basically have to ruin all these properties because they already are not doing well, which is why they just keep getting paid or purchased and then kind of kicked out around to other people. So it's a little bit of a hot potato situation of whoever's going to be like holding this giant conglomerate at the end when everything's unprofitable. But
Yeah.
they have like billions of dollars of debt, and it is interesting too because we're basically like cable news is dying. A lot of TV is dying, right? Especially against the streamers like Netflix and YouTube and just internet media in general. So it is interesting that basically the Ellisons are buying all of these dying dinosaur kind of legacy brands that are constantly having mergers and then ruining their own brands, right? With like HBO and their name, like, all these name changes that they do that's not necessarily helping them suddenly become profitable. And meanwhile, they're paying like some company probably millions of dollars to tell them to do these horrible branding things. So it is kind of
Well,
interesting that the
yeah.
Ellisons want to have all these like horrible properties that are dying and have no future and are super expensive. And they're taking on a shit ton of debt to be able to buy it all. So I also kind of
Yeah.
don't care, but it would be nice if a lot of these liberals that are leaving the Washington Post, CNN, all these legacy institutions, it would be nice if you had some kind of like conglomerate that was kind of intentionally liberal, like Fox News has, and so Newsmax and OAN and all these other companies that are just like kind of intentionally partisan. But it
I
would be
say let
nice.
them
And for
die. Everyone on the right is always like constantly saying, "Oh, the liberal media, blah blah blah." Well, like just fucking let the conservatives buy it, and then it's like imagine buying a buying a lemonade stand from a kid on the street corner, but it has $8 million of debt. Well, what are you going to do with that lemonade stand? You're going to have to sell it for $80,000 a glass. You're going to have no fucking customers. Like you can already see what's going to happen. Oh, we bought CNN. We have a ton of debt. We need to make more money. I know. Let's triple the commercials. Let's pay
yeah.
all the people way less. And we're gonna milk this for all we can. Oh no, we're hemorrhaging. So it's supply and demand. Let's make a streaming CNN that charges like $39.99 a month, and you're like, oh no, we're losing all our customers. And it's like, oh, but we have all these debts. And I say like, let these people get into an economic quagmire because like I don't know. I just think it's funny. Like to some extent, I don't. I've heard a lot of people talk about this. I'm not the most knowledgeable about media, media empires and the media business or media organizations, but I've heard a lot of people say that these companies are all dying. This is basically a last ditch effort to see if we can buy up every like legacy broadcast media company and organization possible. Can we come out on the other end, regardless of how much debt we have, with some kind of profit making thing that keeps this behemoth alive? And in reality, the answer might already be no, right? Maybe they can't compete with Netflix. Maybe Netflix and all the other streaming services and everything online are just going to probably eat their lunch every day. And then the Ellisons will have bought something for like who knows how many billions of dollars and effectively had done nothing with it. I don't know. That's my prediction.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. Let's talk. I heard an interesting point, kind of people taught or reflecting on Obama's foreign policy, especially now that we've had 4 years of Trump, 4 years of Biden, and now we're
Mm-hmm.
back into Trump again. But just, I was kind of interesting to do. I was interested to do a little retrospective. Um, Let's see. Some people have claimed that Obama was a bit of a failure on foreign policy, which I don't know if I really agree with. But I guess kind of talking about what their point is that Obama kind of downplayed the threat from Russia in 2012, which maybe doesn't age well now that kind of Russia is kind of a big thorn in America's side, like always. He didn't do much about Russia stealing Crimea. Obviously, that got hung up because of Congress, and they were worried about a tit for tat, where we start spending a lot of money in Ukraine and then they start spending money. So us really kind of doing anything wouldn't necessarily help. And that has probably kind of arguably played out because we are helping, or at least during Biden's term, we were helping Ukraine. And it just kind of, it did get Europe to help more, but that only made Russia just go more suicidal and willing to like kill more of its men and waste more money. Obviously, the Iran deal was undone by Trump. The Syrian refugee crisis that maybe wasn't as handled as well as it could have. And obviously, there's a lot of stuff with Obama being willing to start a war in Syria, but then going to Congress for congressional authorization, and Republicans wouldn't give it to him, despite telling him he's a pussy for not going into Syria. But some people have arguably suggested that Syrian refugee crisis kind of led to Brexit and a lot of these kind of real right-wing, fake populist, racist reactions to kind of democracy based off of immigrants coming in to other European countries. The Trans-Pacific Partnership was designed to box in China, but Trump ripped it up, obviously, and now he's tariffing all those countries anyway. So it would, had the TPP gone into effect, I'm sure Trump would have destroyed that anyway. And then Obama did kind of tell Netanyahu to fuck off for not starting a war with Iran, and he didn't do it. But Trump is not that same man that Obama was, and now we're maybe going to invade Iran for Israel. So, and you want to cook with any of that? What are your thoughts on how Obama's foreign policy looks with all these years
Well,
of
the first
forward
thing I think
thinking?
is just the first thing I think of just economic, right? In 2009, he takes office, and the U.S. economy is hemorrhaging 800,000 jobs a month, right? And then the rest of the world's doing even worse, right? We basically had no growth for a long period of time. Everyone thought it was going to be a Great Depression. Obama pulled us out of that, and it took a long time, right? No one had any appetite to do the kind of massive stimulus we did after COVID, which we have since found, and I think it's fair to say. And anyone can disagree with me, but I think well, I'll say this. It is possible that Biden spent too much after COVID. So somewhere between the 780 billion that Obama spent and 5.1 trillion that Biden spent is the sweet spot. And I think Obama was hamstrung by the Republicans and couldn't get to the amount they needed. So, if you think
I'm
about
talking
it,
more about foreign policy, though. FYI,
well,
I think
I'm
we
getting
probably
to
agree
that.
with each other. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So the going into the 2012 election, the economy was still kind of a pretty big issue between him and Mitt Romney, and who was going to do a better job continuing expanding and fixing the economy. So to some extent, things were happening around the world, but we had a lot of problems here at home. We had a lot of problems with the economy, and I don't think there was a lot of appetite for his first term really to just spend massive amounts of money. Certainly not to go invade other countries and stuff. So then.
Yeah, and the whole thing was drawing down the forever wars, not trying to re-engage in other countries, especially in the Middle East.
Yeah, I mean, you can make that claim right now. Oh, Obama was a pussy because he didn't do X, Y, or Z in the Middle East in his second term or whatever. But at the same time, as the war continues, I think this argument only makes sense, right now when we're not fully in a political quagmire in Iran. But if we can't get out of Iran, doesn't that prove that the don't do stupid shit under Obama was far superior to what we're doing in
Right.
Iran? Obviously Syria was a clusterfuck, but that's one of those things too. Is everyone's like, oh, it's Obama's fault. Yeah, it's Obama's fucking fault that Syria collapsed. What about all the other countries around them that didn't want to be bothered to take any Syrian, refugees? Why, Germany of their own volition and good-heartedness took 1 million Syrian refugees. And look at what that's done to German politics, European politics. A lot of the Western societies really fucking took it on the chin for a lot of these countries that are, the World Bank, the IMF, it's all funded by Europeans and North Americans and stuff. And we do all this economic development, and then all these other countries are fuck everyone. We want only in it for ourselves. So I don't know what the argument is, I guess, that his foreign policy was dumb, I guess. Is that the
No,
argument?
some people have speculated, or some people have criticized it as largely a failure, which I think is stupid. And you have a great point about the domestic economic problems that obviously his first term was pretty prioritized, focusing on. So that was a really good point. But I think in terms of maybe people contrasting it with I guess to steelman people who say that Trump has better foreign policy than Obama, people would say that Trump is a decisive decision maker and he's actually getting things done, as in bombing these countries and doing regime changes everywhere he wants. And I think that's
Yeah.
pretty stupid. I don't think it's working out well right now. And I think it's definitely, in hindsight, it's going to be a horrific mistake. But that's just what some people say.
Decisive doesn't mean good. And then spending 4 years to make a decision on what you're going to eat for dinner tomorrow is also not like good,
Yeah.
right? So there's something in between, like, you know, I don't know. Like, yeah. I guess I'll just say I don't think his foreign policy was that stupid. I mean, Syria would have been a quagmire, right? Like after Obama didn't do shit, nothing really happened until 2024, right? That's when the new Syria. So like we had another, 8 years of civil war. So had we done anything, would it have looked more like Iraq in 2007 or would it look like Syria today in 2026? Probably more like Iraq, especially while Bashir al-Assad was still in power and, willing to use chemical warfare. Who knows what he would have done to like any American soldiers who had to go in. So yeah, yeah. I don't think just like decisively going in and blowing shit up without any political strategy is a good idea either. But I guess some of the argument is that Obama could have done more in more places of the world and they had too much restraint. But like, I guess everything is like time temporally anchored to what happened before. So like maybe in 2012, calling Obama a pussy for not getting into a war with Syria was probably kind of a unfair thing to do, especially and kind of stupid after we were still in Afghanistan and had already just left Iraq in failure politically anyway, right?
Yeah. What do you think about Russia? Do you think, in hindsight, Obama should have done more after Russia stole Crimea to maybe prepare Ukraine defensively?
Well, this is like
Any?
Ukraine's an example of a geopolitical situation that takes some nuance and most people don't want to have. Like Ukraine was not what we think it is in 2008, right? Ukraine was still a corrupt country run by aging, ex-communist, KGB type oligarchs who were siphoning money from the state and like there was no democracy. And then they had the Maidan revolution and that radically changed the politics. So like, before the Maidan revolution, they were literally a different country. They were an
Right.
ex-Soviet, like corrupt place, and then democracy happened. So if you're going to say, "Oh, Obama didn't care about Ukraine," it's like, yeah, why would he? It was, controlled by a Kremlin agent. Why would he? Like, why would we be trying to foster and spend money and support civil society in a country
Yeah, but
run
I think
by?
the point would be more like post 2014, after the Maidan Revolution, after they took Crimea and all the little green men or whatever partisans that they were putting in. Again, I'm just asking. I'm not saying like
Well,
for or
yeah, I mean,
against.
I guess a counterexample would be like if Putin sent some like little green men and stole like 8 square miles of Belarus, would be people be like, "Oh, Trump, you're a fucking pussy for not going in and supporting Belarus," and it's like, who cares? Fucking Lukashenko is like Trump, Putin's little stooge anyway. So like Belarus might as well be considered part of Russia. Like I don't think it was
Right.
effectively a independent country in any meaningful sense. And you could probably say the same thing about Ukraine to some extent, at least from the political leadership and the corrupt oligarchs running the place, like before 2014, certainly before 2012 and 2010, right? So
Yeah.
that's like,
Right.
it's weird. It's like a fundamentally different country. It's a democracy now, and we should support that because it is
Yeah, and they
democracy and
did
care.
throw
Yeah.
out all the Russian stooges, forcibly threw them out of the country. They
Yeah.
all fled back to Moscow.
Well, and that's the
Yeah.
thing we have to remember too is like, people will say Ukraine's still a corrupt place. And it's like, yeah, because fucking judges who've been there for 40 years are still the same corrupt assholes who they were before, right? Like, it'll take like time to get that like rot out of the system, right? Think of like a country where all the rich people are just corrupt assholes. And then suddenly you change the government, you fire some judges, you get new politicians, but like all the people with the money are still the same old rich assholes, right? It's going to
Right.
take time for them to like leave the country and go hide in Belarus and Russia because
Or
they
finish out their careers and retire.
yeah, exactly. And then, and then they'll probably, and this is the unfortunate thing about human nature and society and families, and like they'll pass down their wealth to their asshole children who are going to probably perpetuate some of
Yeah.
the badness. Like, for example, like if today Russia became like, magically Putin like goes away, disappears, dies, whatever. And then they go, we're going to do democracy. Well, who has all the money and power? All the oligarchs. Do you think everything's going to change magically in 3 weeks? All those
Right.
oligarchs who are like living on the largesse of stealing the money from the Russian state and the Russian people are still going to be the ones in political power and economic power. Well, I shouldn't
Yeah,
say
they own all the
economic power,
companies
but
they own the
yeah,
cement companies, the construction companies, everything, right?
yeah.
Um, I watched the changing subjects a little bit. I watched the documentary by Louis Theroux, the Inside the Manosphere. Did you see that?
No.
Oh, it was
You
kind of
probably lost me
interesting.
at
It's
Manosphere.
Well, no, I mean, he's not pro manosphere.
No.
He's pro the red pill manosphere. But it's been, I would recommend watching that for you and anybody watching. But it's interesting because it's like a lot of like the Tate brothers, I mean, honestly, I don't even know most of those people and I've never even heard of them. So I am definitely not the target audience for a lot of those guys that do that. But it's amazing. My takeaway is kind of just like how much they're all giant losers, and so it's a lot of the kind of people that look up to Andrew Tate. Like it's super young, right? Like Louis Theroux's going around with them, and like they're getting these like bros are getting recognized on the street by like a bunch of 16-year-olds and 14-year-olds. So it's basically like a terrible impression for the most impressionable young boys. But it's all like get rich, hang out with bitches. But it's weird because it's so superficial and they basically pretend to be rich, and that's kind of their whole shtick until they actually start making money from like YouTube views. I guess if they're incendiary enough, right? A lot of them are just faking everything, right? And then a lot of them, even when they, I guess, have big platforms, it's still not clear if they actually have that much money. And then there's people like the Tate brothers who made their money basically pimping out a lot of women on OnlyFans, right? And basically stealing all of their money and running kind of OnlyFans farms. It's kind of interesting because a lot of the anti-women, the sentiments that like hate feminism and kind of want a more traditional culture in America and love Trump and everything. But it's very odd because these guys basically only hang around with like Instagram models and OnlyFans girls, and then they just talk shit on that kind of girl. And I was reading something that was kind of an interesting point that all of these manosphere guys that only hang around with these like hot plastic women from like Miami and LA who want to get rich or like actively on OnlyFans. It's funny. It's like that kind of woman is they use that as a stand-in for all women, but they're only hanging around this like extremely niche group of women that do not in any way resemble like a normal woman's life in the world, right? Just like they don't really resemble anything like of a normal man's life, right? Like most men are not going to have yachts and drive sports cars and hang around only like models, right? And then like most women aren't the kind of, I don't know. Am I going on a tangent? I guess. What do you think about the kind of red pill manosphere stuff? Because it's kind of a Ponzi scheme in many ways, right?
No, no,
Because
no.
not everyone can have a YouTube channel, right? And get big just hating on women and saying, be rich like me. And they get rich in these nefarious, superficial ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's stupid. It's toxic. I don't think it's good for people. I think a lot of them will regret it. They're just trying to make money right now. Most of the
Yeah, for
internet's fake.
themselves is really all
Obviously,
it is.
social
Yeah.
media is fake. Like, you hear this even on like YouTube. Like, you watch a video of like, oh, what's this? There's someone talking about AI, and it's like, I've heard this video. I've heard this script. They're like literally just ripping it off. They have a cool set. Like, I get it. They paid all their money to buy a set and hope a YouTube, channel takes off. And it's just like, they're not saying anything original. They're not doing anything original. They're just stealing. It's just theft all the way down. People trying to make a social media following so that someone will give them money to hawk, sandals and like fucking Blue Chew and, the
Protein
greens.
powder.
Yeah. The protein powder. Yeah. So like, I mean, to some extent, like, yeah, a lot of jobs suck. Like, would you rather try to like make YouTube videos or like go sit at a desk job for like 45K a year? Like, I can understand why you try to make YouTube videos. Like, should you be doing it like in a toxic way, demonizing an entire gender of people? No, that's a fucking stupid thing to do. And like, I imagine most of these people will regret they ever did it. They won't have made money, and they'll probably be worse off for it.
Yeah, probably. Switching over, do you think we should be worried about?
Switching
Well, I mean
over.
that topic kind of went nowhere, and I
Yeah.
guess you didn't watch the
I don't have a
documentaries or
lot of
whatever.
strong opinions on that stuff, but
Okay. Should we be worried that European leaders in Western democracies are so unpopular? Like Macron's super unpopular. Keir Starmer's government is like really, really unpopular, especially with that diplomat guy who's giant in British politics that just got busted with the Epstein stuff and being, I guess, like a long-term pedophile of little boys. Um, Germany, the Nazi party is kind of the fastest growing party in the country. So
it's not
how
called the
worried?
Nazi Party, I hope, right? What is it? Just the far right AFV or whatever? AFT?
Yeah, I think everyone knows that I think they're self-described as kind of neo-Nazi and far right. Italy tacked hard right recently, although the government there has not, it doesn't have the same cultural insensitivities as maybe like the party in Germany and like the
Well, this is
Republicans
the problem
here.
with like liberal politics, liberal democracy, and like actually caring about human rights. Like, to to all the Middle East people, like, I'm sorry, Western societies gave a shit about you, and none other, like, all the Syrians who got to go to Germany and Turkey and France and all the other countries that took you in out of the kindness of their heart at their own political, what we're seeing now, downfall, like 10, 15 years later. It's like, it's a tyranny of good intentions. It's no good deed goes unpunished. It's just odd to me, like, the fact that like, Western societies cared more a lot about these people than like their own people in the Middle East did. And like we talked about this last time with like Gaza, how Jordanians and Egyptians won't fucking take any of them. They don't barely even want to feed them or let food go through, So it's like, it is weird that like, this is one of those questions is like, does liberalism protect itself? Like, well, what if you care about injustice and bad things happening to people around the world? You take them in, and then you have a massive,
Racist
populist
backlash.
racist backlash against it because, like, God forbid, you saw people in need whose homes were destroyed, whose leaders were out to persecute them and murder them by chemical weapons, and you brought them into your country, and now your political system is being co-opted by a bunch of asshole racists because, like, God forbid you help someone. But at the other end, like, to some extent, this is kind of like the I don't know what the term I'm looking for, but like, tough, liberal values and democracy, protecting itself, liberalism protecting itself at some point. Like, the European countries say like, okay, like Syrians, like we've kept you here. If you commit crimes, you're going back to fucking Syria or something. You know what I mean? And like, where's the political entrepreneurship to work with the Syrian government to let those people go back if they want, especially if they commit crimes and that kind of thing. And the other thing too is like, I don't know. It sounds kind of weird to talk about, right? Just like the homelessness issue. Like, do you let people be homeless in the streets? Like, or do you just fucking arrest them and take them somewhere else? And like, is that the hard love kind of thing, right? So like, to some extent, like, okay, there's lots of people, hundreds of thousands of people are liberal minded people who care about the rest of the world and care about their own societies and like things like, are we going to let the welfare nets all disintegrate across like Western countries because we brought in so many immigrants who aren't citizens and have all these issues? I mean, there's a million facets to this kind of debate. So I'll just like let you kind of spoof off that. Like, what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, there has to be some line if you're going to have all these countries kind of revolt because all the racists get together and pick like just the shittiest person to lead them, whether it's like Orban in Hungary, a Nazi party in Germany, Trump in America, obviously, maybe Marine Le Pen in France, right? Like, I guess it is not good for democracy and liberalism in general if by being liberal and extremely nice to a lot of groups of people, like maybe too many, like obviously, somewhere between zero and all of them, right? It's not an extreme. It's got to be somewhere in the middle, but it's obviously not good for democracy if you just piss off a loud enough, racist enough, violent enough minority that is willing to just kill a bunch of people in the democracy and take violent power, right? Like you could see it like January 6th was kind of an attempt to do, and who knows what'll happen if like the midterms go really bad for Trump. So I mean, like you have a very good point there.
Well, if I could
And
add
it's
something, I wonder if I could add a framework where like you think about like, okay, there's like the humanitarian things you're doing for good that's out of like the kindness of your heart as just like good people. But then there's also like the political and public policy problems within your society that you've allowed to fester, right? So I just Googled this to make sure, and I've heard this before, and I think we've talked about it before, but like France spends 55, what is it? I just pulled it up. 57%, 57.3% of GDP. That's their government spending per year, right? In America, we spend fucking way more money than we have, and it's only 23%. So, like, I've heard a lot of people point out, rightfully so, that, like, okay, France wants to be a military power. They want to push back against Trump. They want to protect their, industries. They want to be a dominant power around the world. And they're like, you fucking can't, France. You spend 57% of your GDP per year on public welfare spending. There's no more money. You cannot do anything you want. Congratulations. And it's like, oh, and we're going to bring in all these refugees from other countries and give them welfare. And it's like, we can't do that in America. And we spend half as much per GDP per year, of government spending. So like, if you think of the framework, it's like, okay, all these people, you've mentioned it before in other countries you've been to, like when you get to retire with like full pension at like 55, maybe that has to fucking stop. And then it's like, where are all these people in these societies who are 40, who are like yeah, okay, I can wait. I can work till I'm 57 instead. And it's like there's
Yeah, right.
no one in the developed world apparently cares about their own well-being. And it's like the Goldilocks of the Earth around the sun, right? It can't be too close or too far, or life's not possible. And it's like for a modern democracy to work, especially with
Yeah.
aging populations, you have to
Yeah.
like fucking give a dollar to someone else once in a while. So it's like I think there's an interesting framework where it's like uh you bring up far right parties in Europe, and it's like, yeah, they fucking spent themselves into oblivion. There's no more money anymore, and they brought in all these refugees, and nothing. We're not changing. The second Macron ever mentions like maybe you should work 3 more months than your father had to before
Yeah.
retirement, and everyone fucking goes out in their yellow jackets and protests, and is going to bring
Burn
there's
shit in the
cars on
streets.
fire, and
Yeah.
it's like where is your obligation? And then it's like we talk about this all the fucking time. We're spending $7 trillion the United States government is spending, and we only bring in 5 trillion. We're adding two. We're literally like every time you blink, there's like $800 billion added to the federal debt, and it's like we have how many millions of people have kids, and like we're just literally like we are done spending our kids, our kids' money. We are now like successfully moving and spending our grandkids' money, and it's just like absurd that and it's like no different than we have. That was like I'm just like talking really fast now, but that was a complaint about like Biden, like just open borders, just bring everyone in. And it's like, that's fucking stupid. We shouldn't have done that. Where's like the cold shoulder, like, okay, if you have a genuine, I mean, I could talk forever ad nauseum about like public policy, just catastrophes, right? And like, okay, so we brought a bunch of people in and we like have 800,000 people waiting a court date. And it's like, why don't we hire one more fucking judge? Why don't we get that like 7.9 months instead of 8? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So like,
right.
I don't know. And we see it in our political system as well. You have the far right
Well,
gaining
and that's
steam.
the dumbest thing too. Is like if we have this immigration problem, a refugee problem, a problem with a bunch of people claiming asylum and refugee and migrant status that maybe they don't deserve. Like, why not just hire 1,000 more judges so that now instead of you come here and then you get processed and now you just have 2 years to kill. I guess you can work in America, do whatever, but then see us in 2 years for your appointment. Like, why not hire 1,000 more judges and make it like a 3-day wait? Okay, you stay here over the weekend, and on Monday or Tuesday of next week, you get processed, and either you're allowed in, or you're sent back to Mexico or wherever you came from, right?
Well, that's a great point. And then like think of the public policy and like policy entrepreneurial type thing, like with businesses. Like, okay, let's say you have like okay, say you have 80,000 like Venezuelans who fucking walked from Venezuela to the southern border. Okay, they don't want to go back to Venezuela. Like, what are we going to do with them? We don't want to let them in our country. And it's like, here's an idea. If you're in like southern Texas and you throw a rock and then right where that rock lands, there's a bunch of fucking people with no fucking jobs who will take $3 an hour. Fucking build a city in northern Mexico that's housing 80,000 Venezuelans that don't want to go to Venezuela, and like, okay, America, go to Mexico. Hey, we have this mutual problem. Why don't we let both of our companies go 50-50, equity, debt, whatever, and like actually fund some factory somewhere that'll pay these people $3 an hour, which is
Yeah.
infinitely more than the amount of money they would make if they died in Venezuela by going back. And it's like, I just literally thought of that. And it's like, I don't understand why more people don't come up with more solutions to these problems. Like, I mean, think about it. It's so you have hundreds of thousands of people like literally on the border who can't come in and they have nothing to do and don't want to go back for where they came from. Fucking, I can think of something to do. Apparently, if you let
Yeah.
them in, they'll just pick tomatoes. So, I mean, they're willing to do that. There's not a lot they wouldn't do.
We could make a new canal all the way across northern Mexico.
Yeah.
And have to deal with another country owning the Panama Canal. Something,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
If you really have thousands of people with nothing to do, you could pay them to build an American-Mexican canal or something.
Then you don't even need a wall. We have like 100-foot wide, fucking
Like a
canal.
mile wide.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Cruise ships can
That's
just
funny.
go right through. And then it's like, oh, we can build bigger aircraft carriers because they're not like constricted by the physical size of the Panama Canal. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
win-win-win. Yeah, I don't know. That's the
That's
lack
an
of like,
interesting thought experiment. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, in any other case, I mean, that's like that's like the funny thing. Like people have talked about how like, oh, it's not like literally true that like women literally in all cases get 70% of the money men make, because then it's like, where are the businesses will say, fine, I'll fucking hire all women if I save 30% of my bottom line.
Right.
So like, that's not to minimize any problems women have, but it's like, some of these economic things are not quite what they're, the talking points typically are, but
Yeah, and kind of going off a similar theme, I have a problem with like I think like cities, especially blue cities with like homeless populations, how you just don't do anything about it. And I think there's a big push right now. There's kind of like in San Francisco in particular, where the like I think the like more than the mayor, there's some board. I forget what the term is, but there's some kind of council that has like all the real political power that has to vote on things for the mayor. And so this council basically, I think Matt Iglesias was writing about that on slow boring, his Substack slow boring, basically saying how like there's basically a radical revolution to basically elect normie kind of Democrats and not these like hardcore progressives that are kind of like destroying the city in many ways because they're so far progressive that in the same ways that Republican politicians unfettered by any kind of moderation will ruin places. Kind of the same thing with like people on the far left. But I think about that a lot, traveling a lot, because there's like the homeless population that you see in San Francisco. It's wild. Like you just walk around and there's streets where people are just allowed to do any drugs. They're all doing that weird fentanyl leaning thing. And like you just look at it like this is fucking crazy. This is a city, not this is a street, a city, a population not thriving. And at a certain point, it's like immoral to allow that to happen. And I think about that a lot in transit too, because a lot of people will complain about transit and not want to use it because of homeless populations, because of risk of like theft or violence or whatever. And then it's like insult to injury where people stop using it. Suddenly the profits go down. Now the city's wasting a lot of money having these transit stations and systems that people are not using. And then you could actually make a profit if you actually got it up, people using those services. So kind of going off what you're saying, it's like, I really, really hate that the idea of just like homeless people that we don't do anything about, we don't solve the issue, and then we make everything in the city worse, more expensive, less efficient, and it's just kind of like a spiral because I guess we just don't take care of some situation. And I don't know, like it's same thing with what you were saying about giving people a bunch of jobs. Like if there's a lot of homeless people and you want to get them off drugs, right? Like I don't know, couldn't like San Francisco be the cleanest city in America instead of having shit and garbage everywhere and human feces and urine everywhere, right? Like if you
Yeah.
literally wanted to just pay homeless people to start cleaning up and get them off drugs and have a program instead of just like, it's like, I think about that a lot when like I did this job in San Francisco and like they did this big thing before the job, a half hour, somebody came and how they were basically telling us, it was like kind of very much in like the more woke kind of era, but like, don't call them homeless. Don't call them homeless because that's really bad. We got to call them unhoused because it's not that they don't have homes. They have homes that came from somewhere. And it's like the whole, and then I walk down the street and there's just, the situation is like literally unbelievable. The poverty that you're seeing all around. And it's like, we did this seminar for a half hour, just patting ourselves on the back that we're not calling them homeless anymore, but we did nothing for them. We did absolutely nothing to make any of their conditions materially better in any way. Right.
No, you're right.
No.
It's a total catastrophe. But
Yeah.
on that note, I gotta wrap this up because I gotta go. But
Okay.
yeah, no, it is an absolute catastrophe. It's absurd that we allow that. And the federal government could help if they want. We spend $7 trillion. I always joke with people, what can you do with $7 trillion? Any fucking thing you want. You want to go to Mars? You give me seven
Yeah.
trillion dollars, I'll fucking get to Mars. You know what I mean? It's like you can do anything you want with $7 trillion. Everything's all choices, and we make a lot of dumb ones. So
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, all right. Well, if you got to go, thanks for listening, everybody, to Brain Milk. This was a weird one, a
yeah,
lot of ranting, but
yeah.
pay attention to the halfway post. I'm writing a lot of comedy. You want to plug anything for yourself?
Yeah, I got a blog. Follow me however you click my link on this, and I post occasionally. So they're good.
All right, cool. Thanks everybody for listening. Brain Milk out. See ya. Have a great rest of your weekend. See ya.